This review covers the 1941 Ford Custom Woody. It's a 125 scale kit from AMT, kit number 906. It's the classic kit last seen in this 2015 release. The term Woody comes from the use of real wood and panels to make the side panels of station wagons in the 20s and 30s, reminiscent of the old carriages and depot hacks. Now, by the 60s, these same vehicles were being customized by West Coast customizers and tricked out by the beach crowds. Now, the tradition of wood-sided vehicles lasted as long as the station wagons did into the 80s, albeit they used printed vinyl by then. Along with step-by-step construction, we're going to show you detailing for the small painted parts, along with the complex body four-tone paint with wood sides. We'll show you how to wire the motor and properly install the tires. We'll also reveal those hidden mold lines for you to fix for a contest winner. The kit is rated as a level 2 skill level build, but with the really tricky three-tone body colors, I would say it's more like a level 3. Nonetheless, it's got 100 parts molded in white, clear, chrome with vinyl tires and decals. And when you're finished, it's about 7.5 inches long, 2.5 inches wide, and 2 3/4 inches high. Here are the decals for the kit. As you can see, they're very colorful. There's product decals for the car, some things that you'd slap on a surfboard, and of course the vinyl wood tone panels for the body if you choose to use those. Now, they look just like the ones that I had on my 1970 station wagon. I'm also going to add a custom license plate, and you can make these just by, getting an image of the plate of your choice and then sizing it up and using some white glue to put it in place after you print that on some decal paper. Construction starts with the motor, and the engine here is a nice old flathead that's got some high performance parts on it. You can see some of them are chrome, and some of them will be painted additionally along with the chrome. And next after that will be the radiator and the supporting parts there. So we'll take a look at how that all shakes out when you put it together. Now, it's a very detailed engine, but it went together very well. And I've also decided that I was going to wire the motor, and I'm going to show you how that's done as well. But you can see the colors that we used here. I liked the orange for the air cleaners. It kind of sets things off. Red for the engine, and aluminum for the transmission. The headers were chrome, but I put some high temp black on them, and you can see that the valve covers there, the heads I should say, are painted black on top, and that's all for effect. So to wire the big V8, I used a pre-wired distributor kit, and I took and cut the cap off of the kit's engine distributor, just the cap, okay? And then this was a pre-wired kit, so I just cut off its cap with the wires and glued it onto the shaft that's already on the motor. Now, the pre-wired kits also need to be wired properly in sequence, and as you saw, we started out there with the wiring sequence for the flathead engine. So once you've got that done, you can drill out the locations on the valve covers, and then cut a small part of black wire for the boots and slide it on each wire. Then you match up the wires to the diagram and cut them to fit so that they would kind of lay naturally there, just like they would on a real engine. Then you slide each wire into place with the boot at the hole, and then super glue the wires into place. And you can mount the coil later, depending on where it goes in your type of vehicle. And this is a custom, so anything goes there. Next, we'll work with the interior. So don't forget to attach the brake and the clutch pedals to the floor, and paint the floor pan flat black on both sides, but the inside fender wells are body color on the floor pan. So assemble the front and rear seats and paint those your interior color. I use tan. And then, of course, the brake, clutch, and gas pedals are added to the floor mats, and the floor mats are black. And then install the seats. Now the interior panels are painted and installed, and the back sides of all the panels are flat black. And use some tan and paint the front sides completely. The door panels are painted darker brown using a flat brush, just kind of dragging the paint across the panel in light coats to create a wood grain look. The framework was then painted a mid-color brown. All the handles are silver, and as well as the framework on the back panel, and then paint the column tan and the levers silver. The wheel has a tan ring as well, and that'll give you a nicely detailed interior start. The dashboard is pretty plain, but then so was the original car. There's a lot of detail there, but you can use a little bit of silver to trim the pieces in place, and a chrome pen if you prefer to see the chrome a little more shiny. The dials are black with some white on them. They're just kind of picked out there. The interior panels are installed next, and they were separate because they are detailed, just like the interior panels on the interior bucket for modern kits. But these go all the way up to the top of the window sills. Now, add the rear view mirror to the windshield panel and install both sides of the panels to the floor. Then add the rear panel into place. And finally, put the dash panel in that cowl sill part that goes into the front, and install the wheel onto the column and insert that into the place on the floor and up into the dash. Well, let's work with the chassis. We'll start that now and paint the upper and the lower frame black, and the spring is a flat black with some red shocks. The exhausts are steel colored, and I painted the mufflers red to represent the old thrush style mufflers. Normally they're aluminum. Well, the gas tank was painted gunmetal. Now we're going to install the upper frame to the floor pan, the bottom of it, and remember, you got to scrape off any paint or chrome if you want parts to stick together. So add the spring in place there, and then install the exhaust and add the lower frame to the upper. Paint the front suspension that gets installed, and the radius arms and the steering linkages are black. Install the front axle and then add the radius arms in place on each side and add the steering linkage. Now, there are two front bumpers. You can choose between an optional custom or stock version. Also note the stock version can be cut at the crossbar to make a custom bumper with a front plate. So install the bumper of your choice into place and then install the rear suspension next. Paint the rear axle black and the drive shaft steel and let them dry. And then we're going to assemble those, the axle, and add the rear plate. So insert the drive shaft into the center of the X frame and attach the axle in place, connecting the rear spring to it. Then install the rear bumper. Get these parts to work on the engine bay. Now paint the firewall and the fender walls a flat black. You can highlight some of the detail on that with different shades of black. The battery is black with white caps and steel posts, and then the steering linkage is a black color. The edge of the wing windows is silver, and the shocks are red with black mounts. Install the wing windows and using a little dab of Elmer's white glue or some crystal clear on the tabs. You see the firewall, install that at the back and then add the steering linkage to it, and then the linkage goes on to the suspension from there, and then add the battery to the fender well and add both fender wells to the frame. Now install the shock to the suspension and the frame. When the engine bay parts are dry, install the motor. Attach the drive shaft to the transmission and mount the motor by the two pins on the frame using some strong glue to the radiator. And here you see I've mounted the ignition coil onto the fender wall, and then go ahead and glue that into position, and then cut the wire to fit, and that goes into the center of your distributor. Now the tires are kind of a work of art all by themselves. They are a little bit different between the fronts and the backs, so you'll have to be careful to note that the backs are 285s and the fronts are 255s, as marked on the script on the side of the tires. And by the way, you can dry brush that script if you want that to stand out. Now, we're going to assemble the tires. You know, there's the fronts and the backs, and then there's the retainer in the middle that you'll use to glue onto the hubs if you want them to rotate. So the rims and the backs are made for each tire size. So be careful because there's just a small difference in the rims. But go ahead and sandwich those together around the retainers. And if you look, you'll notice that the tires are directional. There's an outside and there's a point side where the rotation goes. Now the tips of the points, if the tire is coming at you, will hit the ground first. So that's the direction of rotation, and the way you mount them is to orient the outside to the correct side of the body. Scuff the tread on the tires with a flat piece of 220 grit sandpaper. Just roll the tires around till you get a little scuffing there, and then insert the rim fronts onto their respective tires, of course, if you haven't already. And don't paint the retainers. Insert those into the rim backs, you know, with the tires like we just talked about. Now, my rims were pretty tight, and I didn't even need to use glue once they were pressed into place. And you just push those onto the axles, and you can use a dab of glue to install each tire in the right location, making note of the directional tires themselves. At this point, your model looks a little rough, but it's perfect. It's the inner beauty that you see here of the interior. But you now have a rolling chassis on which to finish and complete the rest of the model. And now we're going to start working on the body. And it's a little involved, a little intricate. You see the mold line pointed out here in red, and that's on the front fenders. It also goes along the drip rail and down, or the back side of the vehicle is a slight mold line, not as much, but you can use a little 400 grit sandpaper to remove that and make it nice and smooth. And then we're going to wet sand the body with a little 800 grit paper and prime it, and then also assemble a spare tire unit as this gets painted along with the body. So here you see the spare tire assembly, the hood and the body. They are all primed, and once you've primed it, you can look for any blemishes that you didn't see earlier and wet sand them with some 800 grit paper. Wet sanding works best, and let it dry. Now paint the first color. Now note that you always start with the lightest color, and I used a light tan, so you always use that lighter color first. Now we're going to move on to the next step, but remember to let your paint cure fully first. Depending on the paint you used and the ambient temperature you have and humidity, it may take several days, but that will prevent the tape from lifting any paint off or having the adhesive react to the paint and leaving a residue. Now, mask the wood area and completely tape off the wood body and the roof, okay? We're going to also mask off the interior so that you don't get overspray on that. Only leave the body panels that you want body color exposed. So there's a lot of taping going on here. I sprayed the exposed portions then that weren't taped off with a metallic green lacquer, and started with 2 light coats and then 2 heavier coats to get this nice looking rich finish. Now it's time to add the decals for the body side panels, the darker wood tones there, and you're going to need to use plenty of warm water. These really stick quickly, these decals, when you put them in place, and you want them to stick, so use plenty of water to make sure they're right in the exact place you want them, and then kind of pin down an edge with your finger or fingernail, and then squeeze any water bubbles or anything out from underneath them. You can follow that with some micro set. You see that product there, which kind of helps them settle in and contour with the body features underneath. Almost every car from about 1920 through 1980 had some chrome on it, which is actually nickel plating, but nonetheless. We're going to use a product called bare metal foil, and we're going to use it kind of like strips of tape that we would apply to where the chrome is. And then we're just going to use a real sharp hobby knife, a new one if you've got that, and cut around it so that it just leaves chrome plating, so to speak, on the part that you want. It's a really nice look when it's done, and it really adds to the authenticity of your model. With the chrome, the details, the decals, and the paint in place, next we're going to give it an overall coating of clear. So you also have an area that you don't want to paint with clear, and that is especially the roof, because that has a texture. So the roof needs to be masked off and clear coat applied to the rest of the model. And once the clear dries and it's cured, you're going to reverse the masking to tape off and paint the flat roof. The flat roof on top a flat black color. And then we'll finish the rest of the bare metal foil around the roof's trim. And next we're going to work on the window glass. You see the front and rear panels here, and we're going to install those with some white glue later. Also the large sheet of flat stock there, that is acetate, clear acetate, and you'll use that to install the side windows. Now we're also going to dip the glass in some Pledge floor care. It goes by various names over the years, it changes, but you just wick it all off and it makes it much more clear. You see here the templates, and those will be used to cut out your side panel windows and then install those the same way. Or you could just cut out the whole section and glue it all in at once. Here you see the installation with the white glue. It dries clear so you won't see it. It's almost invisible, but you may want to cover it with a little flat if that's in an area that should be a flat sheen. With the body finished now and the clear coat completely dry, we can install the body over the chassis, over the interior and chassis together, and then secure it in place with some strong glue. And once it's there, the engine compartment will be flush and the motor will sit nicely within the fenders. Oh, we'll finish up the front end here now with the chrome pieces and also another custom license plate that I made for a little fun. The three grills get washed with some thinner and flat black, a 50-50 mixed. You can see the darkened areas there, and then of course the highlights are still remaining as chrome. Install them into the grill spots, insert the lenses to the bezels and install those onto the car. Add the mirrors in place and install the running lights on the fenders. The antenna gets mounted onto the header space in the center over the windshield, and then there's no special point where it's located, no positive mounting spot, so eye it up very carefully and then use a small amount of super glue to put it in place. Then cut your license plate out and glue it in place on the tag holder. Now we can move to the back end and it gets finished. Paint the tire holder black and the tail lights stoplight red. Then install the tire onto the mounting bracket holder and the holder onto the car. Then add the hubcap to that. Now install the tail lights and cut the license tags off and fit them and glue them in place. Alright, now we've got our surfboard to work with, and it's some optional items for the build. It's included in the instructions, and there's also a mystery part that has no mention. It's an old style ice cooler, I think, which maybe doubles as a step stool to get your surfboard off the top. There's a rectangular body to it, but no bottom. So I painted the cooler an olive green with some white edges, and my surfboard is yellow. And these are optional parts that can be included. I also added some of the decals to that. I think they look pretty cool. These are all the decals and parts that I had left over. They were, I think, for optional builds, and of course all the extra decals that you could stick on your custom Woody if you like. Well, there you have it. Your model is complete, and it's quite a head turner on your shelf. And as you can see, this Woody looks like it's all loaded up and ready for a run to the beach for some surf and, oh well, a couple of ice waters from that cooler maybe. But overall, it's a great looking model. It's got a nice look to the engine, even with the hood off. But you can detail it, add just completely. I mean, there's all kinds of detailing options that you could do to it. You could put more into the dashboard, even more of the hoses and things for the engine. It's a nice looking car when it's done. Now, it is based on a really old, original kit, but the custom version has all these nice looking custom features to it. Great set of wheels. I think if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf.
Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint. You'll find aisles and aisles of scale model kits, RC models, model rockets, Warhammer gaming, and railroading products. Stop in at Ryder's today and tell them Doug sent you.